Okay, we should be live on YouTube and live on Twitter Periscope. Let's see if this stream is actually showing up. Look at there, we have figured it out. The first stream of 2019 is officially underway after much technical problems. I apologize. I had to rebuild this entire streaming rig this morning, and apparently I did not get it completely right. So we have had some glitches. We had to stop the stream on Facebook. So if you were trying to watch on Facebook, apparently it was causing some problems streaming over to YouTube. So again, I thank you for joining us. My name is TJ Gamble, and I am the e-commerce Holic. Today's stream, as with all of our streams, is brought to you by Jamerson. Whether it's e-commerce implementation or strategy and consulting, Jamerson is here to help you get more from your e-commerce store. Now, I've got an interesting topic here today that we're going to talk about, and I want to discuss enterprise e-commerce on a platform that's not traditionally designed for e-commerce at all, much less enterprise e-commerce. And that is the number one CMS platform in the world of WordPress. And so I was actually at a conference recently, and I heard that this plugin was coming and that BigCommerce was going to enable full headless e-commerce on the WordPress platform. And I thought that would be definitely an interesting topic to me, hopefully an interesting topic to you as well. So I reached out, and we've got a couple of folks from BigCommerce joining us. First, we have Topher. Topher DeRosa is the WordPress developer evangelist for BigCommerce. We definitely need to ping Topher about how you get one of those fancy evangelist jobs. And just in case you guys ask any technical questions Topher can't handle, he brought on Nathan Booker as well, and his title is Product Manager, Platform and APIs at BigCommerce. Topher and Nathan, welcome to the live stream, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, TJ. Great to be here.
All right, so I'm trying to test my buttons here, making sure they all work. See, it looks like we're working now. Looks like we're working. Again, this would not be an e-commerce Holic live stream if I were not having technical glitches with my overly complicated setup. I promise you, my goal over the next couple of weeks is to completely rebuild this thing to where it is spotless and works every time exactly like we intend it to work. We definitely got all the tools. The problem is operator error. So I've got a list of questions here. If anyone out there happens to be watching and they've got questions they want to ask, feel free to ping me. We're taking most of the questions on Twitter or on YouTube, so post it into the YouTube chat, and I will make sure that Topher and Nathan get those questions answered. So I want to start with this kind of the concept. Woocommerce is pretty much the de facto choice for WordPress e-commerce. I mean, anytime somebody's using WordPress and e-commerce, it's typically a Woocommerce site. So what's the benefit of what BigCommerce has done versus Woocommerce?
There are a couple of benefits, actually. One of the biggest problems with WooCommerce is that it tends to fall down at scale. When you get above a certain number of orders a day, the database just gets really slow. And because on the back end we're a SaaS platform, we remove that whole element. The database never gets slow because of traffic. And so that's a huge advantage right there. Another advantage is that on the admin side, where people are still using the SaaS for managing products and shipping and things like that. And we've had a lot of experience putting all that together. We've spent a lot of years putting together that back end, and it works wonderfully. And the front end simply presents your products to the customer in a pleasant way. There's surprisingly little WordPress work that needs to happen in a BigCommerce for WordPress setup. So those two things right off the bat are huge advantages.
So is there a particular size? And again, I don't live. We've done a lot of WordPress stuff over the years, but I don't typically recommend e-commerce for the WordPress platform. So I'm a little uninitiated there. What size catalog or what size website do you typically see having problems with WordPress? And just for those merchants that might happen to be watching, like, hey, is Woocommerce a problem for my site? Like, what size merchants, what metrics are you looking for that people run into problems with?
Surprisingly, it's not so much the size of the store, but really the traffic. You could have 100,000 products on a WooCommerce store, and if nobody ever loads it, it's going to be really fast. But if you have one product and you get 1 million people come by it in one day, your site's going to fall over really fast. And the same, to a certain extent, the same holds true with BigCommerce. Ours is not going to fall over necessarily due to 1 million sales in one day. Of course, if you have cheap hosting, I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But because BigCommerce is inherently faster, it's going to stand up a whole lot better. So when you talk about size of stores, it's really more about the capability of the server. I mean, I've personally worked on enterprise websites on WordPress where there are 1 million hits a day, and you get a big enough server and it's fine. As long as you are prepared for the traffic, then there's really no limit.
So is that really the difference in the performance of BigCommerce versus Woo? Is that you, especially on pages where maybe caching is not possible, cart pages, checkout pages, things like that. The BigCommerce setup and the dedication to e-commerce is going to be a little more streamlined and optimized versus, say, a WooCommerce offering.
Yeah, exactly. WooCommerce runs everything on your web server. So every time it needs to process your entire orders table for some reason, that's going to churn like crazy. And as long as you have properly cached front-end pages, that's not that big a deal. But trying to use the back end of your site when it's churning an enormous amount of data is miserable.
So there are a lot of people that have tried to integrate their platforms with WordPress. Most of the time what they're going to do is they're going to use WordPress as a CMS, and they're going to put their e-commerce platform in the forefront and WordPress in the background and try to pull that data in and through their platforms. And so with BigCommerce, you've done exactly the opposite. You've kept BigCommerce in the background and you've created this headless experience that integrates with WordPress. So your website is WordPress, it's served through WordPress. What do you see as the main advantages of taking that route versus what's been done to this point with other platforms?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, there are a couple.
I would think of it as a.
Not all at once, fellas. Not all at once.
No, happy to take this one. I would think of it as each party is kind of doing what they're really good at, right? WordPress, obviously, one of the most popular, powerful CMSs in the world, right? I think the usage metrics alone speak to that, and I'm sure that's no surprise to our audience today. However, WooCommerce is ultimately kind of an extension built on top of that, right? So that's not to say that it can't scale at all, but it is to say that obviously that's going to put load on the same system that you're trying to use for uptime, just showing people your products, merchandising them. And separately, that also means that the compliance of your server when you're accepting credit cards, your PCI compliance, is now your problem, right? One of the things that e-commerce and dedicated platforms like BigCommerce focus on is the actual e-commerce bit, right? So we're able to say like, hey, we're a SaaS solution, so uptime, performance, those are things that we kind of take care of, and our merchants don't really have to worry about. Things like compliance are kind of baked in, right? Those are things that we guarantee. So versus an open source platform or installed software, I think our merchants sleep a lot easier at night knowing that that's not necessarily their responsibility, that the platform guarantees that for them. That being said, I mean, WordPress is this awesome engine for presenting content and potentially for merchandising products, right? So how do we get the best of both worlds? And that's really where the plugin comes in, right? Because you're able to say, hey, here's a product catalog that I set up in BigCommerce. Here's me using all the tools that are familiar to me in WordPress to actually show that to my shoppers. And especially if there's already WordPress like development experience on my team, I don't have to like retool or retrain. I can do things in the way that I'm used to. But whenever it comes to what feels like those hard e-commerce problems, especially to people on Whoo, hey, is my checkout going to be designed for conversion? Do I have the payment gateway integrations that I need? Do I have to worry about that PCI compliance? And then, once those orders come in, what's involved in processing them? How do I have the integrations to back-end fulfillment services, right? Those are things that BigCommerce is extremely good at and really where we've built our reputation, right? So we found the dividing line where it's like, hey, let's have WordPress do what it's good at, present those products, help sell them, and really be manageable from a content perspective. But as soon as you get into that cart and checkout and then processing those orders, that's where BigCommerce takes over, right? And that's where we do the things that we're extremely good at. So it's meant to be that dividing line where you can kind of have the best of both.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack there. You go ahead, Topher. You got something to add to that?
Yeah, I got one more bit to throw in there. We've had a fair number of people coming to us over the years, leaving WordPress because WooCommerce let them down in some way. Maybe they didn't like it, or they're scaling out, or whatever. And they tend to lose a lot of SEO moving platforms. And so now we can say, stay in WordPress, keep all those years of SEO you've built up with your content marketing and all that kind of stuff. And there's an enormous amount of value in that. If you switch platforms, it dings your SEO. And if you can keep all of that, then you're going to be doing much, much better.
Definitely agree with that. Again, there's a lot to unpack there that you touched on a little bit that I want to make sure we clarify. And we see, from my perspective, one of the big benefits is that WordPress has a ton of functionality and modules and things that are just easy and inexpensive to, plug right into the platform. And when you basically are just pulling data from it, you lose a lot of that capability. And so having it this way is interesting. Now, with that, though, there are a lot of third-party integrations that are required for a proper e-commerce presence that maybe WordPress doesn't have, or at least doesn't have in an e-commerce context. Like, from email automation, payment gateways, tax and shipping providers. Does this WordPress integration change how those integrations are accomplished with your platform? Like, does this increase or decrease limitations around any of those e-commerce specific third-party integrations?
Yeah, great question. So, taking this mental model that we've built where, WordPress is responsible for selling the products, right? Presenting them to the shoppers in a way that is appealing, right? The upsell, the merchandising, the content management, if you will. And then BigCommerce kind of kicks in for cart and checkout and order management, everything that happens downstream. That's kind of how the integrations work as well, right? So anything that happens kind of post-order, BigCommerce has a super rich marketplace of integrations for things like shipping, providers, tax rate calculation, a number of other things on kind of the back end on the downstream. And those things still work with this integration, right? So if you want to plug in one of our partners, I'll use like ShipStation as an example. ShipStation is a company that helps people, buy postage and shipping and handle fulfillment, for their e-commerce store. That integration works exactly the same, if you're using WordPress for your front end as if we're using, a native BigCommerce storefront or any of our other products. For things that are actually on the front end, right? So they're, a product reviews integration or something that helps you with upsell or collects email addresses, right? Things of this nature. That there's kind of a choice there, right? You can use, and we've been working closely with a lot of existing plugin authors that have done integrations for other, for Woocommerce and other e-commerce solutions on WordPress to kind of make them compatible with the plugin. So a lot of the popular tools that are out there already are, becoming pre-integrated. Separately, some of the apps that were already in the BigCommerce ecosystem are now integrating against the plugin. So for those things that are kind of on the front end, whether that's a payment solution, whether that's, upsell, whether that's search is a big one. We're kind of working with what's already out there, either on the WordPress or BigCommerce side, to build our own, kind of follow along ecosystem there. So, just to restate, things that happen post-order and, related to catalog management, related to order management, you can use the existing BigCommerce ecosystem of integrations and apps there. Things that are, tied to the front end and tied to the content, that's where we're working to kind of build that out so people have the rich WordPress ecosystem that they expect. Topher, would you add anything?
Not a lot. You nailed it.
Okay. With that, you mentioned, the catalog specific stuff is kind of the same. So how is the e-commerce data, product data, attributes, orders, all of that stuff managed with this integration? Is that managed in BigCommerce, or can you manage that through WordPress?
Yeah, so in terms of the catalog, sorry, go ahead, Topher.
That's right. Right now, it's all managed on the BigCommerce admin. It gets synced over to WordPress over the API and stored in fairly traditional WordPress metadata. You could mess with it, but it will get overwritten on a sync. And we're looking at different options for that in the future to make it so you could manage it on the WordPress side, but we're not there yet.
Do you have anything to add there, Nathan?
No, you mentioned orders as well. I guess I can kind of dovetail on there. We sync the things to WordPress that you need to show on the front end, right? So the product catalog obviously is a key component of that. As customers are coming in and maybe registering for an account on the site, we can also create a representation of them as a customer on the BigCommerce end, and that allows us to track like an order history and things like that. But all of the things that happen, cart and checkout, those are actually real-time API calls to BigCommerce. So WordPress, for example, doesn't have to store like a cart database. And that's one of those things that can affect your ability to scale, right, on Whoo. If you have too many simultaneous shoppers, people are kind of churning against the carts. And that's one of the areas where you start to see the database get really hot. In this BigCommerce plugin world, those are just live API calls to our backend. So they're kind of passed through, and they have minimal effect on the WordPress server and the infrastructure. Once you kind of get through that checkout process, that order is actually created in BigCommerce. It doesn't need to have a representation in the WordPress database. If that shopper logs in again to look at their order history, once again, we can just pull that in real time from the BigCommerce API. So, all that stuff on the front end, the catalog, hey, we need to show this to shoppers. There is a representation of that in WordPress because we know that people like to work with that data locally. But for things downstream, orders, it's all real time and just connecting to the BigCommerce as the source of truth.
All right, guys, if you have questions and you want to get them answered, questions about e-commerce in general or WordPress or this BigCommerce to WordPress integration, please post them in the chat on Twitter or you can tag me on Twitter or you can post them in the chat on WordPress. Also, if you happen to be new around here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell while you're at it. If you guys don't ask questions, this is going to be a short live stream. I'm very lazy with these, and I depend on you to ask the good questions. Don't let me down. No pressure. No pressure. So we're going to continue through my questions, and then we will get to any audience questions as well. So what size merchant is this ideal for? We've already talked about the size merchant as far as volume of orders or sales volume. That's kind of where they run into limitations with WooCommerce. Is there a particular merchant that this solution seems to be ideal for, both on the large end and the small end, right? Like, is there a problem if you hit a certain scale, or is it for beginners, or do you need to be a little more sophisticated merchant before this solution makes sense for you?
As far as I can tell, it fits exceptionally well for pretty much the entire gamut. Because it can run very, very quickly, you can put one product on it, run it on $4 a month hosting, and it's going to stand up just fine forever. Or WordPress scales to the enterprise just fine. You could put 100,000 products on it, and and do $1 million in sales a day as long as your server's beefy enough, a larger enterprise store is going to want to do some trickier things, and that's going to start getting into coding and things that smaller stores are going to want. But it's certainly possible. The API's there. Everything should work just fine. So it goes all the way from the very small, all the way up to enterprise, right through the middle of small business and all of that.
Well, we're always preaching to people, e-commerce is about building trust and reducing friction. That's really what, a lot of sales is about, not just e-commerce in general. And so, one of the things that first came to mind when I heard about this integration is the possibility of the checkout URL being different. And a lot of people will do these integrations and then they'll forward over to another site for the checkout instead of it being truly in the background via APIs. So as a customer with this integration, what does checkout look like? Is it redirected to a separate URL? Is it completely hidden to the user and behind the scenes? Like, how does that work?
Well, by default, we iframe the checkout into your WordPress site. So the customer doesn't really know. As a web developer, I was a little dubious about that at first because iframes are iframes. But I was really, really impressed by how our engineering team put this together. I can't tell that it's iframed in there. So to the customer, it looks like they just stay right near your site. Now, that said, it is possible to leave the site and go to a subdomain on BigCommerce. And I was surprised to learn that there are some people that actually want this. They have their own reasons. And then something we have coming in the future, we're working with several of the larger WordPress forms building plugins to make it so that you can use drag and drop form builders to create your own checkout form right on your own page. Many of them already do this for WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads, so it's not that much of a stretch for them to add in functionality for BigCommerce. So at some point in the not too distant future, you'll be able to just build your own custom checkout, and then you can ask whatever, off the cuff questions you want to ask during checkout, things like that.
It sounds like a very, very bad idea, Topher. If you guys are not very advanced merchants out there, don't go messing with your checkout, okay? Keep it simple, hire a professional, right? Just because you can does not mean you should, all right? With great power comes, what's the Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility, okay? So I don't want to be putting out bad ideas here, okay? But that is interesting. Like how custom can you get with that? I'm sorry. How custom can you get with that? Yeah, with the custom form builder that you're designing, like how crazy can you get with the checkout?
Well, right now it doesn't work for us, but I know that Whoo and Easy Digital Downloads do it already, and you can go as crazy as you want. There are core fields that are required, of course, credit card information, all that kind of thing. But then you can just add whatever fields you want. Now, there's a caveat, a big one to this, and you're right that there's a big danger in this. Suddenly, PCI compliance is on you because now you're running credit card information through your web server to our API. Whereas with our normal model, with the iframed-in page, then the credit card data never touches your web server. So it's a big step. It's something you have to really think about if you want to do this. But then, we want to add the flexibility so that if you know what you're doing and this is something you want to do, you can.
So with that brings up a good point. Like, what is the PCI compliance implications of this integration? What data is stored on the actual web server? What's completely, just API driven? Are there any PCI concerns or additional steps that a merchant needs to take to be PCI compliant?
Nathan, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I can touch on that. So I'm, I don't claim to be a lawyer or a PCI expert, so grain of salt, and obviously do consult, with your credit card processor on these requirements. That being said, I can tell you the way we've designed the plugin and what the intent was behind that. With the iframe model, the nice thing about that, as Topher touched on, is that actual credit card number, and obviously that's the most important thing to protect for PCI, the default state of the plugin is that we do use that iframe, and that means in terms of the form where the credit card is typed, that's disconnected from your WordPress web server entirely, and that stuff's transmitted directly to BigCommerce, right? And that means that within that iframe, BigCommerce can cover you under our platform PCI compliance. That doesn't mean you have no paperwork, but it does mean that your paperwork is very simple. There's a version of the SAC document that you have to fill out, usually annually when you're processing credit cards, and our merchants have kind of a one-pager that's really straightforward, where they just say, hey, we're using BigCommerce, and they don't get audited. They don't have to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole there. Once you switch over to a custom checkout and potentially having that credit card number pass through your server, then yeah, your server comes under scope, and you do have to do a little bit more paperwork, take on a little bit more liability there. That being said, especially as merchants scale, they may already be used to that, and that may be well worth it, especially from like a features perspective, and if you need that super granular control of the checkout. But we tried to make this plugin, as easy as possible to get started. So we tried to make sure that default state, that really strong default, is keeping it super simple. And really one of the benefits, even over Whoo, right, is that Whoo can't say like, oh, you're not under PCI scope on your server, right? So really it's a big differentiator for the plugin, I would say.
So versus Whoo, like this out of the box, as long as you don't go mucking with the checkout, you're fairly well PCI compliant, versus say Whoo really depends on how you configure it and your checkout settings, your payment gateway, things like that. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what's going on with the credit card number. The other thing that PCI touches on is personally identifiable information generally, right? So what's your email address, what's your full name, and things of that nature. That's stored in both systems in our model, right? So you register for an account, a registered user account on the store, you're going to come back and be a frequent shopper. That's going to be stored in both the WordPress database and transmitted to BigCommerce. That's usually not a huge deal in a PCI compliance process, right? They are primarily focused on, hey, what's going on with credit cards? So once again, BigCommerce drastically simplifies the compliance process. And for most of our merchants, yeah, it's like a 1 day a year, fill out a 1-page form kind of deal.
And we've got some great questions in the chat, guys. We are going to get around to those questions shortly. Please just keep them coming. Post all of your questions. We will get around to each and every one of them. Just keep them coming. We're going to get through all of the topics I have to talk about here, and then we're going to come back to your questions. So this is a brand new offering. It's a brand new plugin. Headless e-commerce is kind of at least a fairly new concept. So I don't expect it to be as robust as your SaaS platform. But from an end user perspective, from a customer that's on the site shopping, what functionality is missing out of the box with this plugin as compared to a website that's built using BigCommerce?
Yeah, so the in terms of coverage of our feature set that's natively available within BigCommerce, the plugin exposes today a subset of that. So I'll give you an example. We have a bunch of features in BigCommerce that are kind of catered towards selling B2B, right? And things that you see in B2B commerce, a big component of that is like customer-specific pricing, right? So I might have contractual agreements with some of my customers in B2B, or even just, I've been doing business with you for a while. You spend a lot of money with my store, so now you get a special sort of tier of pricing. We didn't expose that in the first versions of the plugin, right? Our focus was kind of like, hey, let's go after retail and people that are just trying to sell like physical products, kind of direct to consumer. So in terms of like our first cut, we didn't include those features. One of the things that is obviously on the roadmap for the plugin, and we hope to enable this year, is to pull in more of the stuff that's natively available within BigCommerce. So as an example, with customer-specific pricing, we have a really advanced pricing engine within BigCommerce, right? We're an enterprise SaaS, e-commerce platform, so a lot of that stuff is baked in. And at a certain point, it's like, hey, if you can have a product in your catalog that can have 1,000 different prices, does it actually make sense to try to keep all of that in sync with the WordPress database, right? We've got basic product information, but do I want to store these 1,000 versions of the price? So what we're thinking in terms of a model there is, once again, like, let's lean on the API, have the basic representation of the product within WordPress so you can access it locally and play around with it. But when someone logs in, And now when they potentially are going to experience, a different price, once again, we can pull that real time from the API, just in time to show it to them. So you kind of get this hybrid model of like, hey, you have enough data locally to do your job, but anything that might change with high frequency or be customer specific or have a lot of permutations, pricing and inventory are great examples of this. We can just reach out once again real time to BigCommerce with the API, so that you don't have to have this database that slows down because it's storing all of this stuff. And that's a model that we hope to use across a lot of our features as we kind of expose them through the plugin.
Nice. We have some great questions. Keep those questions coming. I've just got a few more topics here I want to get to, and then we're going to get around to your questions. So please keep them coming. One of the big questions, when just kind of asking around for people's opinions on this integration is, what are the fees associated with BigCommerce and specifically this integration? Is there a certain tier you need to be on with BigCommerce for this integration to work? Is it an enterprise only thing? Like what are the fees associated with BigCommerce in general? And are there minimums to make this integration work?
Yeah, there are no added fees for this particular integration. So when you go to BigCommerce.com and you look at the pricing page, that's what it is. Our bottom tier is $30 a month, and that goes a really long way. The next tier up is $90 a month, and then $250, and then call us. But $30 a month takes you a really long way. If you're getting set up in e-commerce, you can do this long past the time when $80 a month is going to pinch. So we don't charge any additional transaction fees on top of whatever your payment gateway charges. So that's a good perk there. We have the lowest PayPal fee around. We cut a deal with Braintree, and if you're going to use PayPal, you're going to pay less with us than anybody else. So all in all, it's very affordable. Automatic recently did an article about how much the average WooCommerce store costs, and it was about $1,000 a year once you buy all the plugins and add-ons that you need. And our $30 a month plan, I think, works out to $375 a year, and that comes with all the stuff. So that would be apples to apples. So it's substantially cheaper than WooCommerce, which is often touted as the free version.
Yeah, well, that's the hidden cost of open source sometimes that people don't necessarily understand. But I want to make sure I clarify. So you're saying you can be on the lowest BigCommerce plan available, and you still have the capabilities of running this integration with WordPress?
Absolutely. And what's even more interesting is that in the past, with our traditional SaaS model, if you wanted more than one store, you had to create more than one account. So you're paying 30, then 60, then 90 if you want 3 stores. But now with WordPress, you can set up as many WordPress sites as you want and run subsets of your products on each of them. So you can have multiple stores with that same 30 a month plan. So for example, if you're a sports memorabilia seller, you could have a WordPress site to sell basketball stuff and another one to sell football and another one to sell baseball. And the world at large is not going to know that you're running them all off the same BigCommerce store. They seem to be 3 completely independent stores, but they're all running off the same core account.
Now we're getting crazy. I mean, that's interesting, right? That's kind of one of those unintended side effects that isn't immediately known. So if I wanted to do that, if I wanted to say I'm selling collegiate, licensed goods, and I wanted an Auburn site and an Alabama site and a Texas site and a USC site and all of that jazz, I can have one BigCommerce site. I can throw all my products in there, and then I can build individual sites that use that one BigCommerce site. Now, if I did that, how would I filter products? Is that through a custom attribute? And if all of the materials that communicate with my end user, say emails and receipts and things like that, I mean, I'm assuming all of that stuff would be the same. So I would have to make that a more generic name. Is that how all of that would work?
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of questions there. Yeah, first
Yeah,
of all, yes,
this is
what you can't do.
the number one rule of live streaming or podcasting is to not ask 3 or 4 questions in one question, and I just violated the hell out of it. So here we go.
Well done. All right, so yes, that is exactly what you can do. We have what we call channels, and so you can sell on your main store, or you could sell on, or in addition, you could sell on Amazon and eBay and Facebook. And now WordPress sites are simply more channels. So you can spin up a new channel. Well, then from the product side, you can say, I want this product to appear on such and such a channel, which could be Amazon or your BigCommerce SaaS site or any number of WordPress sites. And it can be on more than one place at a time. So you could sell it on WordPress and Amazon, or 2 WordPress sites and nothing else, or whatever you want. So the multi-channel, omni-channel method is really, really slick and powerful.
That's definitely interesting. A couple of other questions I'm going to get through here, and then we're going to get to the audience's questions. Again, if you have a question, if you're just joining us for some reason and you missed all of the live stream, welcome, but post it in the YouTube chat, or you can just send it to me on Twitter, and we will get your questions answered here shortly. Again, if you're new around here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We need the only validation we get are the thumbs up buttons on the video. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, and subscribers, so you'll know when we go live. We're trying to get back to going live. We may at least once a week. We may go live multiple times a week, but we have a lot of interesting things coming for you over the next few months. You're going to be surprised. So just hit the subscribe button, and then let me know when we post new things, and how you like those. So 2 more questions here from me, then we're going to get to your questions. One question is does this open up or ship with any B2B capabilities? Like limiting access to products, or is there more flexibility that offers B2B? Or are there any native limiting product access or changing price or anything like that is shipped out of the gate?
Nathan, this one's all you, man.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as I kind of mentioned, like our initial phases of the plugin, and we're really just a couple months into this journey, a couple months since our 1.0. We focused on B2C. Right. So a lot of the B2B features that are native to BigCommerce, whether that's, we touched on customer specific pricing, whether that's exempting, certain B2B buyers from tax, whether that's controlling visibility based on, once again, who the buyer is. Those are things that we said, hey, that's not going to make the cut for 1.0. What we're doing now is we're going back, we're figuring out the right way to scale those features and bring them into the plugin. And I think those are things that we're going to open up this year. Nice. It is worth calling out along those lines, right? That just because the functionality isn't in the plugin today doesn't mean it's not possible. We've purposely built the plugin in such a way that it can be extended. I mean, obviously, the WordPress community is a community of developers, right? So we've intentionally given kind of full access to our API within the plugin. So even in the case where we haven't gone and enabled a particular feature yet, it's totally possible to get in there and extend it yourself. And it's, of course, open source, right? And we've had a really awesome response from the community. We've started to see them contribute back to the plugin, and really we're better together. So anyone who wants to contribute back is more than welcome to do so.
When I was polling merchants, one of the, about this integration, one of the big questions they had was around coupons and discounts. How does this affect couponing, discounts? Is that managed in BigCommerce, still in synced over? Does it function as it does in a native BigCommerce site? Like in general, how do coupons and discounts work in this integration?
I think that one's yours too, Nathan.
All right, we're going to kick over to Nathan then.
Yeah, so the moment you add something to cart, right, that's when we go from pulling things out of the WordPress database and we go to just real-time API calls directly to the BigCommerce platform. So as a result, we're able to control, the coupons, the discounts. We have a super rich discount engine where you can set up triggers and actions and say, hey, if they buy 3 of these from this category, between these dates, here's their discount. So really, you have full access to all the stuff that's natively available there within BigCommerce. There's not too many limitations in terms of like, oh, you can't use the coupons, you can't use the discounts. If there were to be one thing, it would be around the communication of that stuff as early as possible in the purchase funnel, right? So obviously, if you're running a sale, if you have promotions, if you're merchandising your products, you want to tell people about that as soon as possible and encourage them to buy. Most of the functionality that's natively in the plugin right now is focused on, okay, now you've added to cart, and we're going to show you, the promotion you've received or what you've saved. That being said, I mean, we're conscious of the fact of, from a best practices perspective, you really want to pull that forward as much as possible. And once again, things that we're looking at for the future. We've certainly seen people, set up using the native capabilities of WordPress, their own merchandising flow there to let people know what promotions happen to be on. But we do want to, make that a little bit more turnkey, a little bit more automated, so that just by enabling that promotion within WordPress, it's going to automatically kind of merchandise that to your shoppers if that's what you want.
Nice. Okay, we're going to get to your questions here. We may talk about some other things after that, but we've got a little time here. So I'm going to go through some user or viewer requested submissions and comments. Dan Davies. Dan, thanks for watching the live stream. Dan says, I wish Magento was as easy to work with as WordPress from a front-end point of view. I agree with you, Dan, to some degree. I think progressive web apps are going to change the landscape for everybody, including WordPress. One of the interesting things for me about this integration is some of the capabilities it demonstrates as far as headless and progressive web apps. But again, that flexibility of WordPress can come with some concerns and limitations as well. Jason Boslow. Jason, thanks for watching the live stream. And Jason says, we were able to use Facet WP to achieve the navigation structure from BigCommerce to WordPress. And that's one of the interesting things here, is that now you can use this array of WordPress functionality and plugins with your e-commerce data. And that makes it very, very interesting indeed. Again, I'm just going through the comments here. Go ahead. You got something to add to that?
Can I throw it there? Yeah, it's an interesting story there with Facet WP, because faceted search in our traditional platform is not available in the 30-a-month plan. You have to get the next one up. But Facet WP is a faceted search that it just exists in the WordPress ecosystem. You can use it to search anything. And so when we released our plugin, I went to them and I said, hey, how much work would it be to adapt this to work with BigCommerce? And he literally did it in 20 minutes while we were chatting on Slack. He sent me a new version of their plugin that said, here you go, it works now. Now, they did some more testing before they rolled it out into production, but it was very minimal work to get faceted search working flawlessly. And now with WordPress, you can get it. It's more available than it is on our traditional platform. And we don't have to work at that. There was some question about how we were going to get our faceted search ported to WordPress. And at this point, I don't know that we ever will, because Facet WP works wonderfully.
So what he's saying is BigCommerce just cost themselves money at your benefit. So, now you don't have to pay for the upgraded plan. Just go with this integration. You're good to go. All is well. Talesh mentions...
If faceted search is all that was... if faceted search is all that was keeping you on the higher plan, then you probably shouldn't be on the higher plan.
There you go. He said it. I didn't say it. Wasn't me.
That's right.
Don't be writing me telling me that I'm, costing BigCommerce money. It was not me. I didn't say it. All right. So we've got Talesh here saying, asking WordPress developers to take on PCI compliance is a big step. That's referring back to when we were talking about modifying the order form. And this is, to touch on that, Talesh had a great question. Why don't you allow the WordPress developers to customize the form on the iframe? So, like, you go into the BigCommerce platform and you customize the order form from there instead of doing it via WordPress. And that way it maintains all the PCI compliance and avoids all of those problems. Is there, particular reason why you don't go that route instead?
I have some minimal answers to this, but I think Nathan's going to have a better answer. We do allow a certain amount of customization. At this point, I'm not happy with how it's done. I think we could afford some more customization, but you can change design to make your iframe match the rest of your site. Nathan, do you have any input on how the checkout can be customized right now in WordPress?
Yeah, so we certainly have some of the same customization capabilities that we have, natively for our non-WordPress customers. And to phrase it in realistic terms, you're going to be able to make your checkout match the look and feel and branding and colors and fonts, of your existing WordPress site. So there, to as Topher phrased it earlier, right? Chances are people won't even be able to tell that it's actually an iframe. Same URL, nicely blended into the page from a styling perspective. So that works pretty well. In terms of the use cases, when we talk to, a bunch of existing WordPress, WooCommerce merchants, while building the plugin, most of the time when they wanted to go farther than that, they actually wanted to go a lot farther, right? So, hey, I'm already using WooCommerce. I'm having scaling trouble. I'm a large merchant doing a couple million a year. And by the way, I have a really strong opinion for exactly how my checkout should work. So we are thinking about, hey, can we actually bring more customization capabilities within the iframe? But a lot of the folks that we talked to were just better served by our API, right? They were at the scale where maybe the PCI compliance didn't necessarily scare them. Maybe they were already kind of adapted to that. And they wanted their checkout to work differently, or they just wanted to have control over every single pixel, to the point where that iframe really felt like kind of a constraint, right? Fortunately, we do have the option, right, to just plug directly into our checkout API, and then you can do whatever you want, design your own form, optimize for conversion, however you like. That being said, we are still actively discussing, hey, there's this middle ground where, maybe at a code level, you can still change the checkout that's within the iframe, but still have the benefit of it being in the iframe and having that credit card information transmitted directly to BigCommerce. Do not pass go, do not go through the WordPress server, for all the compliance benefits that brings.
And for those that are not in the know, Talesh has been on the live stream a couple of times. I look forward to seeing you at Imagine, Talesh. But I miss you a little more on live stream days. I don't know if you can see that on the stream, but my second guest, Topher's picture on my little cue card here is a picture of Talesh, because I pulled settings from when Talesh was on the live stream. So I get to look at Talesh as I'm reading questions from him. I don't know if that's awkward, but it's how we do things around here. Next question is from Emma Hunt. Emma, thanks for watching the live stream. I appreciate your questions. And her question is, can you integrate PayPal with the plugin? If checkout goes through the API, how hard is it to integrate PayPal? We don't have audio from you there, Topher. Can you hear me?
There we go.
There you go. Don't mute yourself.
Because I was, yeah. It's the cost of having a cold. You can. What credit card processor you use is determined on the BigCommerce side, and PayPal is absolutely an option. We work with Braintree, and it's flawless. There's no real work to be done there. But that said, because all of the payment stuff is handled on the BigCommerce side, you can make changes and try something else or add in Stripe or whatever you want without doing anything at all to your WordPress site. So nothing happens there. You can experiment and do things all on the BigCommerce side.
So if you wanted to do, say, PayPal Express, where you go to a product detail page and you click that PayPal button and it's one click and you're over in PayPal system and you check out, that would be a mild customization from the WordPress side that that would completely bypass the BigCommerce system, I presume?
I don't know how that would work. Nathan, do you know how that would work with PayPal Express?
Yeah, so for the PayPal account checkout, right? You're not paying with a credit card; you're paying with your PayPal account.
Right.
It is supported within the embedded iframe checkout. The use case that we're talking about here is pulling that a little bit further forward, right? Potentially to the product page or earlier in the purchase funnel. Today, that's not natively included in the plugin, right? That would involve some customization. There's probably a couple of different ways to solve that.
Yeah, for those that might be interested, I wouldn't anticipate that would be real complicated. With PayPal Express, it's a simple form. You put in a little bit of info into that form, so you output a little bit of HTML on your product detail pages. You ought to be able to make that work. If you want people to be able to add to the cart and then check out, then that is natively included in the checkout. Confirm that, guys. So that the native checkout, like you add 3 or 4 items to the cart and then check out via PayPal, is natively supported.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So keep your questions coming. I'm going to get to all of them. And we are just going down the list here. Okay. I think we touched on this a little bit, Emma, but we will ask it again and get clarification. With functionality, different prices, etc., can you easily make a password-protected area for early access or wholesale? If, say an e-commerce business is doing both retail and wholesale, can you password protect certain products or information on the site using the plugin, or is that a customization that's required?
There's 2 answers to that. If you want to do it by product, then not easily. You would want to stay on the BigCommerce traditional hosting. However, it's relatively easy in WordPress to set up a password protected area of your site, and then you can choose where to put your products on your site. So you could have the public facing part of your site and the private part of your site. And that's comes to stock WordPress. Doing it that way would be pretty easy. So there's more than one way to get that job done.
Awesome. Emma has another comment here. It says, "This is a game changer. I'm so excited to learn about BigCommerce and the new plugin." And I agree with you, Emma. I believe content is how you build a brand these days. And so having the content management capabilities of WordPress and then being able to leverage that for your e-commerce to a certain scale, to a certain degree, especially for a small to mid-sized business, is a very interesting proposition. And I look forward to seeing how it develops. I've got Jason here asking me, "What you drinking?" which I've already told him. I posted it in the chat. I cannot pronounce the name of this. I think it's like Bruichladdich, if I had to guess, but that is just...
Hold it closer to the camera.
It's out of focus. It's Bruichladdich. The classic laddie Scottish barley, unpeated Islay, Islay. It's one of those weird things. I do this a couple of times a year where I just say a word that I've always just read and never said out loud, and then people are like, "What? That's not how you pronounce that at all." Islay single malt Scotch whiskey. This is a bottle someone gave me because they were not a huge fan of it, and so I am drinking it. I refuse to buy alcohol when there is alcohol in the office, so I gotta drink it at this point, and it's pretty good. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty good. But thanks for asking. All right, so Emma has more questions here. Again, thank you, Emma, for your questions. I definitely appreciate them. So when you are adding products, are you adding them through BigCommerce or from the WordPress backend? Again, I think we touched on that a little bit, but let's clarify and make sure we've got that right. And keep in mind, too, that not everybody watched the whole live stream. So if they're just joining,
sure,
it's a good question. So how do you manage products?
Yep. Product management is all on the BigCommerce side. There's a nice UI for it, and it works very well. and then products get synced over the API to your WordPress site. You can edit them on the WordPress side, but then it gets wiped out when the sync happens again, so it would be pointless. That said, we're working for the possibility in the future where you could manage your products all in WordPress. We're just not there yet.
All right, so that's a pretty straightforward answer there. The next question, again from Emma, is does BigCommerce have any integrations that talk to a brick and mortar location? You know, inventory management, things like that. How easy is inventory management or managing your back office from BigCommerce?
Nathan, this one's all you, man.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the question is around integrations, but I'll zoom out a little bit and I'll just talk around the problem in general. We certainly have within our native feature set, within our control panel, the ability to do all those day-to-day operations around managing the catalog, updating inventory and pricing. If you happen to have those things in spreadsheet, we can import those and things of that nature. So the functionality is there even before you plug something in. That being said, the questions around integrations, and I mean, we do have this rich app store of lots of sort of back-end point of sale and inventory management and shipping integrations. Especially if you already have something that you're using as a business and you're curious if it's pre-integrated and if there's something you can just kind of pull off the shelf and install on your BigCommerce store, just head over to bigcommerce.com/apps, and there you'll find our app store. All of the integrations there are kind of pre-integrated. They can be installed in 5 minutes, onto your BigCommerce store. So there's a lot of stuff available.
Looks like we have Rob Long in the house, a.k.a. Handsome Rob, a.k.a. Angus Long? But loving the conversation. PayPal further up takes a bit of customization, but not a huge challenge. PayPal never seems to be a huge challenge. That's one of the great things about PayPal. I love you, Rob. I'm still a little upset. I see people posting about this awesome in Texas PayPal conference that they were going to. All my friends are pinging me about this PayPal conference, yet I don't recall getting an invitation. So I don't know, man. I feel like I may love you more than you love me at this point, Rob. I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, PayPal is awesome, and it can't be difficult. It can't be. All right, it looks like we're getting through, and Rob has reached out to Emma there. If you need help, definitely look in the chat there. Rob is a great resource if you need any assistance with PayPal whatsoever. If anybody else has any questions, please post them. I'm going to hold the guys here for a little longer. We've been going about an hour. It took us a little while to overcome some technical difficulties. So I'm going to hold the guys for just a few more minutes, and then we are going to call it a day, call it a Friday. Guys, I want to get your opinion on something completely random that you may not even be able to talk about. So I'm completely okay seeing how this is out of context and we didn't run it by legal or anything like that. I saw a tweet today, and I can't pull it up and show it, but basically Amazon was hijacking people's listings. So they had a listing, right? They had this product listing, and if you clicked on the listing like you wanted to view it, they literally popped up a dialogue or an overlay that says, hey, this Amazon branded product is cheaper and similar. Would you like it instead? Which is just like insane. Like you had to know this was coming, but it is still insane that you pay for a listing, you're giving them like ridiculous percentage of your sales, and then they're going to hijack your listing like that. So in your opinion, how important is it for brands, for merchants to double down and be focused on building outside of some sort of marketplace? Like how important is it to build your own thing and to focus your resources there instead of just, because so many small merchants just are taking the easy route and they get most of their traffic from Amazon and most of their sales. So how important is it to double down on your own e-commerce? You guys have it. Can you even talk about that?
I can.
There you go.
There's
Developer. Once you're an advocate, once you get one of those advocate or evangelist roles, you can talk about anything, right?
Uh-huh. Oh, that's right. So we're going to talk about hamburgers. No, there's a mantra in the WordPress community called "Own Your Content." It's one of the things people say all the time. Anytime Medium restricts your rights a little bit farther on their platform, own your content, or somebody's going to take it away from you. Somebody else will own your content. And people have asked me about that with BigCommerce because they're saying, well, aren't you stepping away from the own your content thing if you're putting all your products on BigCommerce? And my answer is that at any time you can export your complete store from BigCommerce and take it anywhere and put your product data into some other platform. You still own your content. But it is, I completely agree and wholeheartedly hold to that mantra of own your content. If you don't own it, someone else does. And then it's not yours anymore. And what are you going to do? What do you have? So owning your content, running it on your own platform is extremely important. I fully recognize the power of Amazon and selling there, but that's one of the joys of our channel system is that you can sell on Amazon as well as own your own content and run your own store and publish wherever you want to publish. So having that flexibility is really powerful, but absolutely own your content.
Yeah, I would add on. I think that's super well said, Topher. And one of the things that you see from merchants who started out with a strictly Amazon and eBay strategy, right, is they never had an opportunity to build a brand, right? When you buy something on Amazon, you might see one little link there for like who the merchant is, right? But you're not developing a relationship with that merchant. And if you are that merchant, you really don't have an opportunity to have a personal conversation with the person that's buying from you. And separately, assuming you're not selling unique products, there's other people on Amazon competing with you and you're competing on price, right? And anyone who's ever been in sales understands that you never want to compete on price. So a lot of the reason why we see these folks that start on Amazon and eBay and why they come to BigCommerce is that like, hey, we want a branded website and we want an opportunity to actually develop a relationship, right? Because in the long term, that's the value that you build as a company and as a merchant. Because I mean, the situation, TJ, that you're touching on, is really Amazon, eBay, like the tides can shift there and they can shut you down at any time, whether that's through competition or through something else.
Great point, guys. I just want to reiterate, and I'm saying exactly the same thing, but the person that owns your customer data, that owns your traffic, that owns the relationship with your customers, owns your business. And if you build that completely through Amazon, then you're at their mercy. And when they do things like this, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can say, right? You got to look at a source of traffic like Amazon as a bonus at best. And you have to be focused on building your own e-commerce and not relying on the crutches that may or may not be there in the future. So we've got we've got one more question here from Talesh. If you've got a question, please get it in quickly. We're about to wrap up this live stream. And Talesh's question is, some of BigCommerce integrations are wrapped up with product listing. Any restrictions on their integrations when integrating with WordPress? Does that make sense for you guys? Do we need clarification? Some of the BigCommerce integrations are wrapped up with product listings. So, for instance, Talesh, if you've got a particular example, that would be great. But my assumption is a plugin that modifies your product listing in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm assuming all plugins, and this is a broad generalization, but all plugins that affect front-end functionality will either require some customization or are future phase. Is that an accurate statement?
That's probably true. Something that I'm looking at personally, because I think this will work, is that we have some front-end customization plugins that are JavaScript only, and they simply get dropped onto your front page of your BigCommerce store. And I think it should work to just drop it onto your WordPress site. But I haven't verified this yet. But if that's true, then there are a great number of them that operate this way. It's just a JavaScript blob that gets dropped on your store. So I'm still working through that process. But in general, you are right. If it's a plugin that messes with the front end of your BigCommerce store, it's not going to magically hop over to your WordPress site and do things there.
Okay. So let's talk for a minute before we call it quits. We got a barking dog. It's okay, Topher. We believe in barking dogs, man. It's fine. It's not a problem. The barking dog is not a concern at all. Last question here. I'm going to wrap up with this topic. What's the future look like, right? Like, this is the thing that excites me about this is not so much an integration with WordPress. There's some possibility there. But the thing that really excites me is the possibilities when it comes to progressive web apps or microservices architecture, with, you know, e-commerce being a small part of a much bigger offering. So what is the future of e-commerce in general, but more specifically the future of BigCommerce look like in regards to this type of integration?
Yeah, I have my own daydreams, but I'm sure Nathan has probably better answers than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk a little bit about our vision, right? I think for the WordPress integration, I mean, this is the whole idea of headless commerce, right? Or rather, WordPress being your head rather than our native, you know, out of the box storefront. And that's really where we've seen the industry heading, right? People want to have more control over what's going on in the shopper experience in the front end. You know, they don't want to have the limitations of what was quite popular a couple of years ago, is like, oh, I can have this all-in-one solution. Everything's there. All the features are out of the box. And that's sort of changing, right? People are getting more sophisticated on the front end. There's companies that are spinning up that do an excellent job of these individual features like search, right? And people are like, hey, I want to take that. I want to plug that in, right? And then I want to have complete control over everything my shopper sees. But then on the back end, kind of the tough problems of e-commerce, you know, cart and checkout and stability and PCI, you know, they still want those things taken care of. So WordPress is one, and probably the most exciting opportunity for us in headless. That being said, you know, we are thinking of this idea of being kind of agnostic to whatever front end you want. So if that's not WordPress, if that's a completely custom front end, you know, maybe you're just working in React or something like that and building your own, you know, we want those things to be possible as well. And we're kind of proving that out through WordPress, right? We're making sure the APIs are there. We're making sure that, you know, it works really well end to end, and we're iterating on it constantly. But ultimately, you know, whether it's WordPress or another presentation layer, you know, and maybe that's not even a website, right? Maybe that's a mobile app. Maybe that's an Amazon Alexa integration. Maybe that's VR, video games, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that BigCommerce can be there to power that and be adding value and really like peace of mind along the way.
Awesome. With that, we're going to call it a day, man. We're going to hit our weekend hard. Again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Tap that notification bell. Do me a favor, hit a thumbs up on the video. That really helps us out. We're probably going to be a few weeks. I think we've got one live stream scheduled in March. At this point, we've got a lot of ideas and content coming. We're just trying to wrap up some new branding and some new assets. We're going to redo all the graphics. I've got a lot of edited videos we're working on right now, hiring new editors and things. So there's just a lot coming. I know we've been quiet for the last couple of months, but guys, this is about to be crazy. I'm about to annoy the hell out of you guys with the amount of content that we are putting out. So please, don't be afraid to subscribe. If you have some ideas for content, let me know. I want to thank the guys from BigCommerce, Nathan and Topher, for coming on and being a part of the live stream. This is really one of the first live streams, or this is the first live stream we've had, at least about an e-commerce platform that wasn't Magento specific. And we want to get out there and we want to learn about all of the offerings. We want to learn more. So anybody that's got some ideas or wants to be on the live stream, please ping me, let me know. I'll be happy to have those conversations and see if we can get something scheduled. So I look forward to talking to all of y'all in a few weeks. Expect some changes around here by then, hopefully, if not immediately following. So with that, I'm going to wish you guys a good weekend. And any closing remarks there, Topher and Nathan?
Use BigCommerce. It's the best. You know what? I have something. My title is developer evangelist, and so it is my job actually to reach out to developers and work with them and grease the skids, as it were. So you're welcome to get a hold of me at any time. Topher at BigCommerce, email. I'm on Twitter, Topher1Kenobi, Slack. There's a special Slack just for WordPress. You just Google WP Slack, you'll find it. And just about everybody in the world of WordPress is on it. So I'm on there. You can hit me up there. I'm here to answer your questions and help things move along. So let me know if you need any help.
Awesome. Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, just dovetailing on to what Topher said, I mean, we are so eager, right, to build the right thing and make sure that people, in the WordPress community have an alternative to WooCommerce, or, really just a platform that scales and solves their problems. And, the best way to make sure that we're doing that is to hear your feedback, right? So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. You've got Topher, you've got our open source community, you've got our support folks, and welcome to reach out to me, Nathan at BigCommerce.com as well. We've already several times in this journey, we started out with one idea, we heard some feedback from the community, we immediately pivoted, and a couple weeks later, we were able to unlock some really cool stuff. So don't be a stranger, please reach out, and we're happy to work with you. Awesome.
One last thing I forgot to mention. I stole this nice BigCommerce pillow when I was in Austin, Texas. Am I going to get in trouble for this? Is this going to be a problem?
Yes, our team is descending upon your studio as we speak.
I didn't know. See, the thing is we were upstairs at a thing, and then all the pillows disappeared, and I thought people were stealing them. And I'm like, man, people are grabbing those pillows up. But then they moved them down to another thing they were having. So the fact that I took one, now I'm like, did they just moved them? But maybe I'm the only one that took one. I don't know. Anyway, if you need your pillow back, hit me up. Let me know. My cost, I will mail it back to you. Just let me know.
All right.
Guys, if you're watching, again, appreciate you watching. Thanks for taking part. Thank you for your questions. Look forward to speaking to you again here in a couple of weeks.